Welcome to Survivor Scale, the show where we break down all of horror's greatest characters to find out who has the skills, experience, and mentality to be the ultimate survivor. I'm H2 Mass, and today I'm breaking down every main character in Parker Finn's 2022 Cyclone of Psychosis Smile. Where a monster that spreads through trauma ironically infects a therapist and sends her down a spiral of paranoia that makes you question how she got her job in the first place.
I am not crazy!
We start the film with a much too close-up of an overdose before panning through a room that also looks like it's overdosed until we see a child that seems to be experiencing the desired effects of the drug. After revealing the sequence as a traumatic memory of her mother's death, we meet Rose, the adult version of the child, who's become every horror fan's worst nightmare. A therapist that never takes a day off. Towards the end of yet another long shift, her boss suggests that she go home, but she instead displays extreme diligence when she continues working and prepares to meet Laura, a new patient who recently saw a professor bludgeon himself to death with a hammer. I think he took the term "get hammered" a bit too literally. When Laura arrives, she tells Rose that she's been seeing some type of evil entity that smiles creepily and wants to kill her, impersonating both strangers and relatives when it gets close. Rose, however, seems to dismiss Laura's fears as delusions, demonstrating poor openness to the supernatural. During their conversation, however, Laura suddenly screams and falls to the floor, her body seizing up as she struggles to breathe. Rose quickly rushes to an emergency phone to call for help, but when she turns around, she sees Laura completely relaxed, standing like she's in an advertisement for toothpaste. Just as Rose notices a piece of broken glass in her hand, Laura continues smiling as she slowly grinds the shard into her neck before collapsing to the floor and bleeding to death. Traumatized, Rose just stares in silence. Looks like Laura got the last laugh. When Rose gets home, she continues to struggle with what she just experienced, seeing an apparition of Laura standing in the hallway and then a train walking into her kitchen. Startled, she drops her glass onto the floor. As she tries to recompose herself, her fiancé Trevor displays some mild emotional awareness by recognizing Rose's uneasiness and asking her what's wrong, before then comforting her when she tells him the tragedy of Laura. Sounds like the perfect boyfriend. Surely he'll be like this the whole time. The next day, she compounds her diligence by returning to work despite the trauma she's recently endured. Fortunately though, she displays some proactivity and inquisitiveness by gathering more information about Laura, discovering that the professor she saw commit suicide had been smiling when he killed himself, just like Laura did. While walking through the hall, she sees a patient sitting alone with nothing but a smile to keep him company. Realizing that nobody smiles unprovoked, she checks in on him, but much like a typical interaction on Twitter, her kindness is only met with negativity.
You're going to die! You're going to die!
Trying to gain control of the situation, she tells the orderlies to restrain him, but when she turns back, she realizes that he had actually been lying in bed this entire time and she had simply imagined his aggression. Yep. Sounds like Twitter. After learning about Rose's miscalculation, her boss tells her to take a week off with pay, but while most employees would be thrilled to get paid for nothing, she seems quite shaken. Luckily though, this gives her time to go to her nephew's birthday party, so she buys a toy train from the store and goes home to wrap up the gift. There, she continues to expand on her inquisitiveness by listening to a recording of Laura's suicide, where she hears a faint sound. Shocked, Rose falls out of her chair and scrambles to the kitchen before grabbing a knife and posting up against the wall to defend herself. Trevor then rushes in and tries to calm her down, but her skittishness holds steady as she continues frantically holding the knife, despite no ghost in sight. Hey, that's still a good caution. The next day, she tries to act out the title of the movie, but can't seem to stomach it for long, so she goes to her sister's house for her nephew's birthday party. Opening the present that she believes to have a toy train, her nephew instead pulls out a dead cat, which initiates a scene that I can only watch with the sound off, where Rose tries to explain herself as all the partygoers look at her with eyes of judgment and shame, believing Rose to have put the dead cat in the box. Setting the stage for her clumsiness, another smiling face appears in front of Rose, causing her to fall backwards and crash through a glass table. She then tries to match its pitch. Later that night, she tells Trevor about what she's been seeing and how she thinks some demonic entity has spread from Laura and attached itself to her. Trevor, though, doesn't believe her and kinda just calls her crazy, saying that she probably inherited mental illness from her mother.
Mental illness. You can inherit it from a parent.
Great emotional awareness, Trevor. That's exactly what you should say. The next day, she meets the widow of the professor who killed himself and realizes that he had also been witness to a suicide shortly before his death, just like Laura and Rose. Believing she's found a pattern, she employs some manipulation and resourcefulness when she asks her cop ex-boyfriend Joel to find out who the professor saw kill themselves and then see if that person also saw someone kill themselves before they died. And she's correct. After confirming that the pattern continues, she goes back home with this evidence to try to convince Trevor of what she's been experiencing. But when she gets there, she finds him with her therapist, seemingly still considering her crazy and not ready to believe her. So she insults him and leaves.
Why don't you just fucking make yourself at home?
A bit later, Joel calls Rose and tells her that the pattern goes back at least 20 people, with 19 of them having killed themselves, but one of them still alive, Robert Talley, a man who had been sent to prison for murdering someone soon after witnessing a suicide. Upon learning this, Rose demonstrates even more proactiveness and asks Joel to take her to Robert to find out how to stop the curse. On their way there, Rose tells him about what she's seen and the connection between all of the victims, and unlike Trevor, Joel seems to show a pretty strong level of openness to her supernatural claims, not dismissing her as crazy when she alludes to an invisible monster that preys on trauma.
What you're saying is that this thing is jumping around from person to person and it is causing them to kill themselves?
Sounds like he's got it all figured out. Good. When they arrive at the prison, Rose recognizes her own potential danger and doesn't tell Robert that the demon has attached itself to her so that she won't scare him away. Robert then tells her that the only way to break the chain is to brutally kill a person in front of someone else, allowing the demon to spread through their trauma instead. Showing extreme discomfort at even the thought of killing someone, Rose impulsively reveals that she is also a part of the pattern, a revelation that causes Robert to scream for her to leave in fear that she'll bring the demon back to him, ending this interaction and relegating the cautious convict to A tier. Absolutely refusing to kill anyone, Rose goes to her childhood home to get as far away from everyone else as she can, knowing that the demon wants to pass itself on to others and therefore thinking it won't kill her as long as nobody else is around. Unfortunately though, she encounters the demon inside the house, its effect becoming even more powerful, with it now harming her physically. As it chokes her, Rose showcases some resourcefulness and hits it with a nearby lamp, which lights it on fire and allows her to escape. She then drives back to Joel's apartment and confesses the mistake she feels she made in their failed relationship, but instead of listening to her, he just releases a deep chuckle with an even deeper smile. Yeah, she didn't escape anything. Finally recognizing this Joel as a demonic illusion, she slowly backs away and then runs out of the apartment, only to find herself right back at her childhood home, with the real Joel just a few feet away. Trying to avoid doing the same thing to him that Laura did to her, she runs into the house and locks the door. As Joel tries to break it down, the demon forgets its skincare routine and puts Rose into a trance, after which it opens up and climbs into her mouth. When Joel finally breaks inside, he sees Rose holding an empty bottle of gasoline over her head. As she turns around, she shows the same smile as all of the other victims and follows in their footsteps when she lights a match and sets herself on fire. While all of this happens, Joel's dumbass neither tries to stop her nor does he simply run away. Instead, he just stands there and watches, despite knowing that bearing witness to her death would put him in the suicide chain just like her. Dumbass. Wrapping things up, the film leaves us with 3 characters to rank. 1 alive, 1 dead, and 1 about to be. Starting with the least fleshed out of the 3, Trevor doesn't ever encounter the demon directly, so I'm less sure about many of his more consequential attributes, like his deduction and awareness, but his fluctuating emotional competency and poor openness to the supernatural don't move far from average, and land him comfortably in C tier. Rose, on the other hand, displays a wide range of attributes with an equally wide range of effectiveness, not only having impressive deduction and diligence, but also pretty terrible composure and self-awareness, with her positive qualities only barely overcoming her negative ones and sending the therapist-turned-thermostat to B tier. Finally, we have Joel, the close to clueless cop with no exceptional qualities, only really displaying pretty poor deduction and awareness that leads him to run headfirst into his own demise. Luckily though, he pairs these slight negatives with a moderate level of openness, bringing together an amalgamation of attributes that characterize him as yet another average survivor. Just perfect for C tier. But that's it. The average ranking for this cast was B tier. An okay collection of characters. While I initially thought it would be just another forgettable gimmicky horror movie, Smile actually turned out pretty well. With its cool cinematography and practical effects, it managed to become one of the best horror movies of the year, turning its title into motivation. Thanks for watching.